Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jets Landing Zone. My name is Walter Melgar, and I will be your host for today. And we're here to talk about Jets. Now, the great thing is that the Jets are on a bye this week, so we are not going to be talking about the Jets' loss, which seems like we've been talking about for the majority of the season. The Jets are 3-8, and effectively they are basically out of the playoffs. I know mathematically there may be a 0.0000001% chance that this team can somehow make it. But I mean, realistically, guys, I think we're all in agreement that there is no chance in hell that this team is going to make it. I mean, this team is in utter chaos. I've been watching the team since 86, and I happen to think that this particular season has been the most chaotic, the most crazy, the most, you know, if this was like a TV series, everybody would be talking about it because it's like you don't know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. So let's take a look back and see how we got to this point. The Jets started out this season 2-1, and then they went into kind of a mini free fall where they lost in Denver and they lost in Minnesota. And the Minnesota loss apparently was too much for Jets owner Woody Johnson to take. And so he decided, you know what? On a whim, I'm going to walk into One Jets Drive, and while my head coach is preparing for the Monday night game against Buffalo, and a game, by the way, was for the Jets to try and take a piece of first place, he decides to walk into One Jets Drive and fire the coach, Robert Saleh. Now, Robert Saleh, I'm a guy that happens to like Robert Saleh. I thought not the greatest coach, but I thought he was a guy that could probably, maybe grow into the job. I mean, you look at what he had to go through for the first 3 years while he was here, and the record for Saleh wasn't terrible considering. I mean, he started out his regime 4-13 back in 2021, and that defense was pretty bad. I mean, the defense that year was 24th in yards allowed, um, 22nd in rushing yards allowed, and 22nd in pass defense allowed. But he did turn this team around, and the second season, if we all remember, they were 7-4, and happened to lose Breece Hall and AVT on basically the same weeks, and that team did, spiral downwards at that point and ended up 7-10. But he had the team kind of pointing in the right direction. But it became one of these things where it's like, okay, it's clear to us that this team needed a proper quarterback. And so, I think every Jet fan agreed at that point, and every Jet fan was happy that Woody Johnson went out and got Aaron Rodgers for this team. Okay, now Aaron Rodgers is an older quarterback, but he was a how many time MVP. He was coming off a not great season, and maybe this was something that we should have seen coming, a portend of things to come and stuff like that. But he had injured his thumb in that previous season before he got here. So you can make the case, hey, if he didn't have the thumb, then maybe he would have played a lot better. And maybe we're talking about bringing in a Hall of Fame-ish quarterback, a guy that's probably going to go, Hall of Fame. I don't know if he goes first ballot, but he's probably going to make it there. And listen, I think everybody was on board when that happened. I mean, I know there was talk with Derek Carr. I actually like Derek Carr. I thought he might be a good fit here. Looks like it wasn't, because he's not doing great over in New Orleans and stuff like that. But then again, neither did Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers came here and you know, infamously 4 plays into the first game of the season on September 11th on a Monday night at MetLife, his season was over. So that left the team scrambling, and you know, Zach Wilson then became the starter after being benched and demoted to backup the year before. And then we paraded a number of guys that literally probably just came off the parking lot in Tim Boyle and, Trevor Simeon. And there was another guy I don't even remember. And quite honestly, I really don't care. But that team, despite all of that, matched the year before at 7-10. And so you can make the case that that was a pretty decent coaching job done by Robert Saleh, considering you're losing your franchise quarterback, and not a lot of teams come back from that. And for them to win 7 games, given the parade of backup quarterbacks that they had, for me, I thought that was a pretty good job. The problem is that you go back to Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers this preseason really didn't show up for the team all that much. I know he was there all along, but you had the controversy of him not going to OTAs, him not really playing in the preseason, stuff like that. And I think that had a consequence going into the season, because clearly we saw this offense wasn't on board with each other. There were, communication mistakes all over the place, inconsistent route running, inconsistent passes by Aaron Rodgers. We had the infamous red line incident with Mike Williams, where he publicly called out a very established and very respected veteran, and I there's no other way around it. You can say that, oh, what, maybe he's holding Mike Williams accountable. You can do that in the locker room without public calling a guy out in front of the media and in front of the entire world and stuff like that. So, Robert Saleh gets fired. We bring in Jeff Ulbrich. Okay, Jeff Ulbrich was put in the worst possible position, like, ever. You know what I'm saying? The guy had zero head coaching experience. The guy decided that he was going to keep the defense under his wing and retain the position of defensive coordinator. And you can see, even till now, he is in over his head with this job. And again, I like Ulbrich. I like what I personally think that he fits that Dan Johnson Detroit Lions mold, that tough, gritty veteran that became a head coach, that wears his heart on his sleeve and stuff like that. But the fact is, he is overmatched. And this team, you look at the decision that Woody made to get rid of Robert Saleh, okay? And say what you will about whether Robert Saleh would have made a difference if he came over here, if he stayed until the year end. Probably not. Maybe the Jets win 1 or 2 more games, but you know what? A lot of the things that, were problematic for the Jets under Robert Saleh just got magnified even more with Jeff Ulbrich. Okay. And so, the Jets, we've always known that the Jets are a poor tackling team, got magnified when Jeff Ulbrich took over. That they take stupid penalties, gets magnified under Jeff Ulbrich. They have this mentality where it's like, okay, pre-snap penalties, not good, but post-snap penalties, if they're showing the violence of the sport and the violence that they take, then we're okay with that. No accountability. These are all things that occurred under Robert Saleh that just got magnified under Jeff Ulbrich. So for us to look back and say, you know what, we wistfully look back at the time that Robert Saleh was here, listen, again, I like Robert Saleh. He would not have made a damn difference to this team. This team would have continued to kind of meander and be stagnant, especially on offense, which he really doesn't have anything to do. Offense is terrible. Offense is terrible. There's no other way around it. There's no cohesion. This team does not play as a team. This team plays individually. They're playing for stats. And I hate to say it, but Deion Dawkins from the Bills, he's kind of right because he called out publicly the Jets. Now, he is the Buffalo Bills defensive tackle, and he clearly has a gripe with the Jets. I mean, him and Michael Clemens got into it, you know, going after a game, during a game, but after a game in the locker room tunnel and stuff like that. So there's no love lost between Deion Dawkins and the Jets. But you know what? He called out the Jets and he said, this is a team that, you know what, all they're doing is looking for things to, you know, up their social media, things that they can brag about, things that, and at the time, everybody was like, the hell, you know what I'm saying? Deal with your own team. Don't talk about us. You know, I don't need to hear you as a Buffalo Bill trying to tell us what the Jets are. But the fact of the matter is, he may be right. Because you know what, you've got all these guys that they're all out here and they're looking to make the big splashes and stuff like that. And you know, it's not everybody. I'm not gonna paint a wide brush with this team, but particularly lately, look at Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner was calling out guys in the media, dude. That shouldn't even be a thing during the season. You shouldn't be looking at social media during the season. Focus on what's important. Everybody keeps saying, keep the main thing the main thing. Clearly, they're not. Clearly, they're not. And you hear Aaron Rodgers and say, well, during the season, there should be no distractions. You know what, Aaron Rodgers? Get the fuck off of Pat McAfee. Because if not, you're a hypocrite. Plain and simple. You wanted to talk about everybody and say, you know what, the reason that the Jets are where the Jets are is because, you know what, we're during season, we've got to keep the main thing the main thing. I go back to that saying, right? That this is a team that needs to focus on football, and anything that doesn't deal with football doesn't need to be discussed. Then let me ask you this, Aaron Rodgers. Why the fuck are you on Pat McAfee every week? That has nothing to do with football. That shouldn't even be a thing for you. If you wanna follow the very, very words that you said. So that's gonna lead us to what occurred this past week. And it's funny because there's a report now out by, I believe it was, let me find out who it is. I can't remember, but Joe Douglas got fired, GM. And so the way it happened, you know, if you believe the reporting, is actually really funny because Woody Johnson flew into the Jets facility in a helicopter. Joe Douglas and Jeff Ulbrich were on the field together at the time. And Joe Douglas turns to Jeff Ulbrich and says, well, if they pull me off the practice field, it's been an honor serving with you. Well, guess what? Woody pulled him off the practice field, never returned. And if you listen to the accounts, Joe Douglas said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going fishing at the Jersey Shore. And that's what he did. Again, you know, I happen to like some of the pieces that Joe Douglas brought in. I don't think he was a terrible GM. I don't think he was the greatest GM. But you know what? GMs have hits and misses. And so you can't say anything about Joe Douglas with that 2022 draft because that 2022 draft was transcendent. The amount of talent that he got from that one draft alone. But you look at some of the other drafts, you look at some of the free agents that he brought in, not the undrafted free agents, because he's been really good at identifying those guys that don't get drafted and turning them into something. The Tony Adams of the world, the Bryce Huffs of the world, you know what I'm saying? These are guys that they know how to cultivate, but he hasn't been able to build the offensive line up until this year. And even this year, there are issues, okay? Tyron Smith isn't what he came as advertised, you know what I'm saying? And again, no fault through him because he is an older player. Morgan Roses has been solid though. John Simpson has been solid. I hope they retain him. AVT, he's one of these picks where, you know what, good when he's here, but he's always getting injured. That's a thing, right? Um, Olu Fashional looks like he might be a keeper, but he's still learning, so we still don't know. But the thing is, we didn't get a proper offensive line until his 6th year. Okay, so that's a problem for Joe Douglas. That goes into the negative column, right? Um, Never really could cultivate a really dynamic wide receiver room. He tried. He got Garrett Wilson, okay, but look at all the other guys that he got that were his number twos. Elijah Moore, um, you know, Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee. Um, who was it? We're talking about Mike Williams. These are all people that he brought in that haven't worked out. McCole Hardman, remember him? He was here for a minute. So, and they couldn't find a way to integrate these guys into their offense. So you look at that. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that you can fault JD for, but the biggest thing that I guess you can fault Joe Douglas for is the fact that he couldn't hit on the coach. And again, maybe the coach, it wasn't truly his fault, but the fact of the matter is the coach didn't win. And he couldn't hit on the quarterback. And most of the time when you don't hit on a quarterback, when you get a quarterback as high as he did with Zach Wilson and misses hard, that's tough. And a general manager generally doesn't survive those type of decisions. It's very, very few and far between. You look at the general manager over in San Francisco. He survived drafting. I forgot what his name was. They ended up trading him to Dallas. Who gives a crap? But the thing that helped him is that Brock Purdy became Brock Purdy. Okay, so that gave him time. They gave management say, okay, well, you missed on that guy, but you got on this guy. Fine. Okay, Joe Douglas, not a great general manager, but it shows the dysfunction of this team because you know what? He was only a general manager in name only this year because all the big decisions that were made that impacted this team were done by Woody Johnson. Okay. So we've already done 2. There's one more chip that needs to fall. And I wore this today because this may be the last time I get a chance to use this shirt. And I bought this shirt right after the announcement of the Jets signing Aaron Rodgers, trading for Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that, because I was excited. I think everybody was. I think anybody that listens to this channel that is a Jets fan truly at heart, we were excited when Aaron Rodgers came here because you know what? This is the first time in quite a long time that we've had a very established quarterback the way that Aaron Rodgers was. Okay? Typical Jets, it didn't work out. I mean, this literally looks like Brett Favre 2.0 because except for the fact that when Brett Favre came here for the first, if I remember correctly, the first 12 games, they were 8-4. But Brett Favre hit an injury, okay? And after those 12 games, they kind of went into the tank and stuff like that. It appears by all accounts, there was a report that came out today that Aaron Rodgers is banged up. Now, listen, you don't have to be a brain surgeon. You don't have to be a spinal surgeon. You don't even have to be a nurse to figure out that Aaron Rodgers is banged up. He's been hurt since probably around the 3rd game of the season when he fell awkwardly, back and his leg bent backwards and stuff like that. And he's been dealing with, at least for what we believe, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury. He's been dealing with a calf injury. He's been dealing with an ankle injury and stuff like that. And it shows because, you know what? He hasn't been as mobile as he was those first 2 weeks of the season. We've seen glimpses of it. But this is a big part of Aaron Rodgers' game: the ability to move around, to be the ability to kind of um, make plays happen when they're not there. That's a big part of what Aaron Rodgers is famous for, and all the successes that he had in Green Bay. And if he can't do that here, then the Jets' offense is just stagnant. I mean, I'm sick and tired of seeing him constantly in shotgun, even when they're doing a running play. I mean, it just boggles my mind how devoid of creativity this offense has. You know what I'm saying? And it is clear that something is bothering him, but it's also clear that, you know what, the dude is playing to not make mistakes. I mean, he's trying. You can see that there is an active, excuse me, there is an active effort on his part to not throw interceptions. And why do I say that? Because the dude doesn't throw past 5 yards. Most of his passes are between the 5 and 10 yard range. It is very, very infrequent that the guy throws deep. And when he does, it's usually a bad play. It's usually an interception. There have been some positives here and stuff like that. But you know what? There's not enough of an effort to try and make those plays, to get those big. And you have dynamic players here that are capable of making those plays. I mean, for God's sakes, you got Garrett Wilson. The dude, he kind of contorts himself just to make a catch. But you don't utilize him. You utilize him to do what? 5 yard slants, 2 yard digs, an out route here and there. Every once in a while, you'll see him, hit a post play, but it's not enough. And I hate to say it, Aaron Rodgers. One of the things that concerned me when we got Aaron Rodgers was this notion, especially the last couple of years in the Packers organization for him, this notion that not only was he willing to kind of nurture and help the young receivers, he would publicly call them out and, kind of embarrass them in front of the media. And I guess looking at it with the Mike Williams situation, that kind of came over to the Jets and stuff like that. But the thing that I find the most damning about Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's a leader in that locker room. I don't think he's a vocal leader. I don't think he's a leader on the field either, because it's very rare that I see him go down and kind of, celebrate with his teammates. Now, maybe it's just that we're not seeing it on TV, but I've been to a couple of games and, a lot of the times he just raises his arms and just walks off the field. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he thinks that running down to the end zone is too taxing for him, that he's going to get winded, that maybe he's going to get hurt and stuff like that. But there is something about him as a leader that doesn't click, that I see. I look at other teams and I see the quarterback is the leader, the general of that team, and you see it how he commands, with those other players, guys like Patrick Mahomes, guys like, even Baker Mayfield, for God's sake. You know what I'm saying? He had a great game against the Giants today. These are guys that inspire. You walk into the huddle and you hear them talk and you hear them how we're going to do this stuff, and you feel inspired. You want to run through a wall for these guys. I don't feel that we get that from Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers comes in, he does his thing, he starts moving people around, changing plays, waiting until, 1 second on the clock, giving the defense enough time to figure out what the hell they're doing, because they're waiting 25 seconds to actually get into formation. And you know what? These wide receivers are just kind of like standing there. So, I don't get that sense. And then when he gets off, I don't see him on the sideline walking around talking to his teammates, trying to get them involved in the game, get them excited. You see guys like Josh Allen walking around talking to his receivers, hitting them on the shoulder pads and say, "Let's go, let's get after these guys." You don't get that from Aaron Rodgers. You just don't. He just goes over there, sits on the bench on the sidelines, looks at his tablet, talks to his offensive coordinator, waits till he's jumping back on the field. So I think there's this clearly is not going to work, and so the reports are now that the Jets, Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, is very frustrated with Aaron Rodgers, and then there are reports that says, oh well, they just had dinner the other night and they're fine, but a lot of what you're hearing is that he's either going to get cut, he's either going to go on the IR, right, and allow Tyrod Taylor to play. He's either going to get benched. There is a report out there that he could get outright cut before the end of the season. Now, cutting Aaron Rodgers is going to be a very interesting thing because he carries a lot of dead cap issues. If I remember correctly, if you cut him post June 1, okay, he's going to hit your cap next year for $49 million dead cap, which you won't be able to use. That is just out of whatever. I don't remember what the salary cap is total, but that's $49 million that's just going to be empty. It's like you never had it, right? And it's going to be for a guy that's no longer on the team. Now, if you cut him after June 1st, it gets a little bit more manageable. I think the cap hit for next year be $14 million, but the following year you get hit with a dead cap figure of $35 million. Okay? At some point, you're going to have to pay the piper here with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's coming back. The reports are he wants to play maybe another season, but according to Diana Rossini over at The Athletic, it won't be with the Jets. He doesn't want to come back to the Jets. And that's fine. I think I've had my fill of Aaron Rodgers. But even if he's not here, he's still going to affect us in some way, shape, or form. So, me personally, cut him now. Take the hit next year. You're not going anywhere next year. And hope that the GM head coach combination that comes in is successful enough to kind of follow the playbook that the Broncos have. Because remember, the Broncos were kind of in a similar situation with Russell Wilson. I believe his dead cap hit was like $56 million. They chose to take it all this year. But you know what? They found a way to make it work. And as of this recording, they are in the playoff hunt. They have Bo Nix playing, balling out and stuff like that. Cortland Sutton, they have it. Their defense is pretty good. So it can be done. But the Jets have to nail their leadership roles. Okay. So me personally, A-Rod, it's been nice knowing you. I'll get you the cab that gets you to Kennedy Airport and gets you out of here. You know what I'm saying? I think I've had enough of Aaron Rodgers. I've had enough of his TED Talks over at Pat McAfee. I'm tired of listening to him after the game. I'm tired of seeing his body language during the game. I'm tired of seeing him trying to blame everybody except him. And then when he does accept it, there's still kind of like this little twinge where you really don't believe him. I'm tired of Aaron Rodgers. He can go. I really don't care. I mentioned this a couple of episodes before where I thought it was sacrilegious to kind of mention, but I thought we should bench Aaron Rodgers and let Tyrod Taylor get a crack at this offense. At the very least, that Tyrod could push the ball down the field. You know what I'm saying? And yes, he's an injury risk, but you know what? You're playing a quarterback that's already injured anyway. So, and this is a dead season already. I would like to see what Jordan Travis is, but he's not going to play this year. He's still rehabbing that freak injury that he had. But you know what? This is a guy that maybe he's good. Maybe at the very least he ends up being a high-end backup for this team. but I'd like to see what he is, because Jordan Travis, if you guys followed college football and you remember, he was a Heisman candidate up until his injury. He was leading the Florida State team to a bowl bid. And when he got hurt, that team fell apart. So there's something to be said about what Jordan Travis could be. I want to see what it is. And maybe next year, that's what we do. Next year, we hand the reins over to Jordan Travis, or at the very least, let him compete for a job during training camp against Tyrod Taylor. You have your quarterbacks already. Aaron Rodgers does not need to be on this team. Let them compete. Let's see what we've got, because in 2 years from now, that's when we're really going to start thinking about building this team for the future. You know what I'm saying? In terms of after getting out of from Aaron Rodgers' cap hit, that's the time that we really, really need to focus on. Last bit before we end this up, and this is actually taking longer than I thought it would, but you know what? There's a lot to discuss about this team, because this team drives you crazy, and this team is entertaining in all the wrong ways, right? But we got to talk about the GM, head coach, football, president of operations, what have you, and stuff like that. And there is a lot of rumors going on. I mean, I've even heard the rumors that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos want to buy the team, which, listen, if that happens, count me out. I'm going to be looking for another team to root for, because that would be an utter mess. I mean, to have those guys run the team, I would almost rather keep Woody Johnson. And you guys can let me know what you think in the comments, but Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, two guys with probably bigger egos than Woody Johnson. This has the makings of, Jerry Jones up in Dallas. Woody Johnson right now is Jerry Jones light. Putting Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos in that position, man, they're going to really be fighting for that top spot on the most meddling and worthless owners in the NFL. So you hear those kind of rumors, and that's what happens when you have a really bad team, right? You start to hear all these crazy rumors. You hear the rumors that people want Eric Mangini back. People want Rex Ryan back. I'm sorry. I like I said, I've been a Jets fan since 1986. I don't want any of those guys back. Maybe Eric Mangini, if you want to say let him run football operations, fine. The guy has a mind. But you know what? There's a reason why these guys aren't in football right now. You want to talk about Rex and all this stuff, and how, he's actively campaigning to have the Jets hire him back as a coach. Dude, you've been out of football for like 10, 15 years. The things that you used to do back in when you were a Jets coach, great defense, ground and pound, especially ground and pound, that doesn't work in this NFL anymore. You're a dinosaur trying to come back into, the space age. It doesn't work. And Jet fans, please don't fall into this whole thing where it's like, let's bring back Rex because of the glory days. Those glory days aren't coming back with Rex. They're really not. Same thing with Eric Mangini. They're really not. You know what I'm saying? It's time for this team to move forward, not backwards. I like Rex. I thought he was good for the Jets back then. He's not good for the Jets now. He's just not. And if he was such a great coach, then you know what? He should have had offers lined up for years on teams. There are teams out there that are desperate for good head coaching. Why hasn't he gotten a job since Buffalo? Sorry. Listen, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, then guess what? It's not a duck, it's a goose. Rex Ryan should not be the next head coach of the New York Jets. Let's move forward. You know what I'm saying? Let's look at the Aaron Glens. And even with Aaron Glenn, there's some trepidation, because you don't want the unproven defensive coordinator. But he looks like he can play the part. He looks like he could be a good head coach. We've heard Mike Vrabel. If I'm going to go defense in terms of a coach, maybe you think about Mike Vrabel. because he's had success. And he's had success with a team that is kind of similar to the way this Jets team is constructed right now. You know what I'm saying? He had a dynamic running back. He had a good defense. He had a pretty decent quarterback. I can't remember who it is, but I know he had some good quarterback play and he had some good wide receivers. He found a way to make it work. So you know what? If we're going defense, I like Aaron Glenn because he's an old Jet, right? He knows what it is to be a Jet. But if I'm going to bring a guy in that's on the defensive side, I'd rather bring in the guy that has experience as a head coach. That would be Mike Vrabel. That would be my choice. But then if you're going to bring in the hotshot offensive coordinator, then you know what? You look at the Ben Johnsons of the world from Detroit. You look at the Todd Monkins, who should have been the coach way back when he first interviewed with the Jets. He's doing a fantastic job over at Baltimore. He's a guy that you might want to probably bring in. These are the type of guys that the Jets really need to kind of look at. But most importantly, they need to nail the GM position. And quite honestly, I haven't done a deep dive on GMs yet, but they're out there. You hear about I forget what his name is, but he's the guy over in Detroit. He's the assistant GM. That's a guy maybe you can think about. But they need to nail the guy because not only do you need a head coach to properly manage this team, you need a GM that will work with that head coach to get the players necessary to move this team forward. So, in a sense, maybe firing Joe Douglas now makes a little bit of sense because you can start the process. You can't reach out to people, obviously, because that's tampering, but you can start the process of bringing in, and this is what's going to happen, bringing in the consultants, building that team that's going to find the next GM, the next head coach, and start kind of noodling who are going to be your best candidates. So maybe in a way, Woody kind of fell into, by dumb luck, a smart thing to do in terms of getting a head coach. And getting a GM by firing Joe Douglas now, getting in those consultants and start working on the process without having him sitting in a corner watching this process occur while he's still there. So congrats, Woody. You fell into that one. Okay? So that being said, I think we're going to end this show on that note. The Jets are coming back next week to play a professional NFL football team next week. They are going to be playing, drumroll please, the Seahawks at MetLife Stadium. It is a Sunday game at 1 o'clock, the first of 5 December games. And that's it. I'm not going to give you a rundown of it because you know what? At this point, we don't know what the hell is going on. I can tell you that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And as soon as I hit end recording, we might get a report that Woody Johnson has canned Aaron Rodgers, or Woody Johnson decides that he wants to bench another player like he forced the team to do in Tony Adams. And again, why Tony Adams? Why was Woody Johnson fixated on benching Tony Adams? I have no idea. But these are the type of things that happen in Jetland right now. So, again, Jets against Seahawks next week, Sunday at 1. We'll be back to kind of cover it, and we'll see what crazy thing happens in that game. But, yeah, until next time, all I have to do is say thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe. Just hit that, smash that button. Doesn't cost a lot, but it'll go a long way to helping us. And until next time, go Jets.